Hi, this is Arthur Carmazzi, best-selling author, currently ranked as one of the world's top 10 thought leaders in organizational culture and leadership, and sometimes awesome guy. And today we are going to talk about where's your brain? And so, last few videos we've been talking about the genes, okay, and where in the brain, the ambiguity relief actually happens, where your brain gets clarity, right? And we also have been talking about why this process of ambiguity relief is important. So today we're going to be looking at another part of our brain and the genes that affect ambiguity relief, or the brain's clarity generating process, okay, in order to basically help you to interpret the world around you. And so we're going to be looking at the hippocampus, and very specifically, we're going to be looking at the SPR gene. Now, last time we talked about the prefrontal cortex, which is super cool, but the hippocampus, as you remember, is the part where memories are created, where all of this stuff basically gets transferred into usable memory. Now, in order for you to have a memory, imagine yourself drawing a picture or making a painting, okay? You have to take the colors and you have to paint it, and you have to basically have this image in your head before you can actually make that picture. Or if you're one of those kind of artists that are creating things as you go along, you still have to have some kind of an idea of where you're going. And that's what the hippocampus does. And it does that very specifically through what are called monoamines. Now, last time we talked about some genes that deal with the catecholamines, which are basically dopamine and norepinephrine. And we talked about the COMT gene. Today we're talking about the SPR gene, which basically works mostly with the hippocampus. And monoamines include dopamine. They include norepinephrine and epinephrine. Okay, and for those of you that don't actually know what that means, it's also the same as adrenaline, and just more kind of a different way of speaking. And of course, it also includes serotonin. Now, we know that getting clarity is absolutely essential for memory, right? You have to have an idea of what you're going to paint before you paint it and before that picture actually stays there. So, in order to do that, of course, you have to interpret all of this. Now, the brain is actually interpreting mostly through the regulation of these monoamines in the hippocampus. Now, specifically, serotonin is kind of like the boss. He's like, this is like the main boss for the regulation of these different monoamines in the hippocampus, which basically means, though, that depending on the amounts of serotonin, dopamine, and norepinephrine, the receptors for these specific monoamines, okay, all of that mix is going to determine the type of process that you have. Let me explain this in an easier way to understand. First of all, let's say that you're baking a cake. Now, maybe you've never baked a cake before, it doesn't matter. If you have baked a cake, you know that you need at least some eggs, some flour, some sugar, and some butter. So you need at least 4 ingredients to make a cake. Now, it doesn't matter whether it's a chocolate cake or anything else. All that stuff is extra. Right now, we're dealing with the main 4 ingredients. Now, let's say that you take all of these ingredients and you mix them. Well, they're all the same ingredients, right? So, just like the monoamines, they're all the same ingredients, but the different amounts of these ingredients are going to create different situations. So, for example, if you have, the lots and lots and lots of flour, well, instead, compared to the other things, what's going to happen that the amount of flour is going to make a hard, flat cake. Now, instead of lots of flour, let's say you put lots of sugar in it. Well, sugar, when it goes under heat, caramelizes. So you have a very sweet and crispy cake. Now, instead of that, let's just say we put in lots of butter. So then instead what you have is this kind of soft, oftentimes oily cake. And instead of that, let's say everything else stays the same, but we put in lots and lots of eggs. Then you just have quiche. So the same ingredients, but in the different amounts, are going to create different end results, different products. And it's the same for your brain, especially in the hippocampus, where all of this stuff is kind of being connected. Now, connectivity is super important. See, like serotonin, being the boss, he's the one that makes sure that all of this stuff gets carried everywhere. So all of your ideas, all of this stuff that you're pulling out from wherever it is that you're doing, you're interpreting all of these things, okay, all of this is serotonin's job to basically get all of this stuff together. Now, of course, the dopamine and the norepinephrine combinations, okay, are going to affect how much it's connected. It's going to affect whether it is internally all connected, like you have this kind of internal reflective or connected thing where everything is just automatically connected, or whether you have to get some kind of an external thing to connect everything. It's also going to determine, of course, whether you are more broad-focused or more individually focused. Okay, so all of these different connections and different amounts are going to yield something different. But wait, there's more. Remember that the receptors for these neurotransmitters are also going to determine largely how much of these neurotransmitters are available. So remember that the DRD type, okay, that we talked about in the last videos, okay, are for the catecholamines, and serotonin will basically be received by the 5-HT type receptors. And there's lots of those different kinds as well. So, now that we've kind of got the monoamines out of the way in the hippocampus, we have to go to the next one. Now, the next one is super cool. Okay, and the next one is the chRNA4 gene. And this is super cool. Why? Because it regulates a lot of what is called the acetylcholine neurotransmitter. Now, acetylcholine is one of the most abundant neurotransmitters in the brain. Why? Well, because it is also the thing that carries one thing over to another, and it has a lot to do with how fast you process information. Now, in the next video, we're going to be talking about another gene that deals with speed, and combined with acetylcholine, which also affects speed, okay, this is also going to determine whether or not you are going to see details or whether you're going to see more big picture kind of things, whether you need structure or whether you're going to be more kind of intuitive. So all of this speed affects your ability to multitask or focus or lots of different things. So acetylcholine is a very important factor in the hippocampus, very specifically, for the speed of process. And that is done by the chRNA4 gene. So, with that, stay tuned for the next one where we're going to be discussing the final area, which is the cingulate cortex, and the gene that basically deals with the speed of processing, which also affects many other factors. And so this is Arthur Carmazzi wishing you great success.